Okay, continuing to customize our plot. So now we've got the horizontal and vertical axis titles, the font size bold and much easier to read. Let's look at the next set of options for the chart. So the next one is series. So when they refer to series, they're referring to the data points here. So these data points are related to this drop data here, which is why it says drop. If we had selected more columns here, we would have more options, okay? But because we've only got height and drop columns, that's why we only see drop here as an option. All right, so the color we want is we don't want blue. So let's click this and change it to black. Fill color, we'll leave that at black. We want the fill opacity to be 100%. You might consider changing that if you had a lot of points that were overlapping. And if data points overlap and you set the opacity like 50%, you can kind of see if there's a cluster of points that are together. Okay, but we're not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to leave it at 100%. The point size we want to increase a little. So from 7, let's maybe increase that to 10. Okay, that's a little bit easier to read. The point shape, right now they're set as circles, but if we wanted to, we could change that to triangles. We could change that to squares. We could change it to stars. Okay, pentagons, any shape you want. But I'm just going to go with circle because that's pretty simple. You might use different shapes if you were plotting different types of data on one graph and you visually wanted to differentiate between them using different shapes. Okay, let's see, let's kind of look at our options here. So axis, we want the axis that goes with that data to be on the left-hand side. So that's why we're going to leave it as left axis. Format data point. So if there was one data point that you wanted to highlight, like maybe this one off to the end here, this is the point 420 and 400. We could click add and then select a point, this one, 420, and we could make that a separate color. So if we wanted to identify this as an outlier, for example, we can click add and we could format that one different from the rest. So that's what this option lets us do. Error bars will allow us to kind of put vertical error bars on each of these data points, but we don't need to worry about that. Data labels lets you label the data for each data point, but as you can see, that makes a huge mess. So in this case, it's not going to be helpful or useful for us. And later, when we do linear regression and correlation, we're going to be calculating a line of regression. And the best way to add a line of regression to this data is to add a trend line. So if I click this, now this inserts a trend line. Now this trend line, if you wanted to keep it in there, the type of trend line we want is linear. We want it to be black. That's good. But change the line opacity to 100%. And the line thickness, I think is going to be 3 pixels, a little bit better. So what you can do is you can just type in what you want and hit enter, and that'll work. And under label, we're going to put none. Now, if you wanted to check and see if your line of regression that you calculated was correct, you could click on label and put use equation. And it gives you the equation for the line of regression here. So you can see if what you calculated matches this. But as you can see, this is actually now taking space away from our plot area. This isn't really needed to be here right now. So under label, I'm just going to turn this off and say none. Okay, so later on, you're going to be adding a trend line. This is how you do it. But for now, I'm going to turn the trend line off just by doing that. Okay, so this is how to format the data points in your graph.